In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to mix in your EDM drums, and we're starting right now. Welcome everyone! If this is your first time here and you want to learn all things electronic music production related when it comes to mixing, mastering, sound design, arrangement, and creativity, you can start now by hitting the subscribe button and the bell notification next to it so you won't miss anything. In all genres of music, the drums are very important to your track, as electronic music really relies heavily on that upfront, really punchy, in-your-face drum sound. So mixing your drums front and center in the mix is very important for the overall success of your EDM track. So this mixing EDM tutorial is going to be broken down into two sections. The first one is the return and send processing, and then the second one is the group processing of the drums. And for all of you producers who process your drums in a different way, I'd love to hear how you do so in the comments below. So let's get into the DAW and start mixing in our drums so they have that clean and powerful professional sound.
So let's take a listen to the drum track first. So both these channels, the drums and the kick and snare, are being fed into the drum bus. Now this is where a bulk of the processing happens. And remember I said we have two different steps for the processing of the drums. And the first one is the group processing. So the group processing are these plugins right here. And then the return and send processing is happening right here. So first we'll go over the group processing. So on the entire group, we have an EQ for more shaping, just very minor cuts and boosts. And next we have a camel crusher, which is just doing a little distortion, barely tapping the mix here. Just very subtle. And next we have a compressor. As you can see, just barely tapping. That's once again just to glue everything together. And then another saturated at the end here, only go at 19.8% on the soft sign setting and at 1.7 decibels. So as you can see, there's only really subtle EQ cuts, compression, and saturation, as I found this is the best way to get the sound, the full sound that you want from your drums. Instead of just having one saturator crushing everything or one compressor crushing everything, I found this is the best way. Subtle layering. So that was step one, the group processing. Now step two is the return and send processing. So all that running through these group processing are going to be in these channels right here. We're going to have a dry and then 3 wet channels. So the dry channel has nothing on it, just plain signal running through it. Now for the returns, our first one is a New York compression, so I'll let you guys listen to that. So a real thwacking type sound. And for the New York compression, the purpose of this is to make the quieter parts louder. So how we achieve that is just by pumping up the ratio, really crushing it with a negative 33.5 threshold, and the attack at 6 milliseconds just to let a little bit through, and the release at 50 milliseconds. Next, we have another New York compression. Now, this New York compression is with a different compressor, so we'll just let you listen to it first. So once again, that's crushing it at like negative 20 decibels. Now with this New York compression, it is the same concept. We want the quieter parts to be louder in the mix, and it's just a different flavor of compressor that we're adding to this. Once again, another subtle layer, and this time we're just using the Waves CLA 76, which is modeled after the famous drum compressor, the 1176. And lastly, we have the high and low accent return and send. So we'll have you listen to that first. So as you can hear, a really filtered out sound. So first we have the compressor going, and this is actually doing New York compression again, but with a different purpose for this one. We want the signal to be flat, kind of a sausage-like looking signal, because we're going to be boosting the highs and the lows. Now if we didn't flatten out the signal, the highs would be peaking a little bit, the lows would be peaking a little bit, and when we EQ'd them up, they would sound a little too brittle or a little too muddy in the mix. So we really want everything to be even. So when we make these EQ cuts or these EQ boosts, they won't overpower the mix. And also we're cutting in the middle here, as we don't want to really clog up the mix. Once again, we're just accenting the high and the lows in the drum group. And now there's one final piece of this, and that is another part of the group processing, and that's being applied to all channels here, the dry and the 3 wet of the return and send, and that is just a limiter. Now the purpose of this limiter is not to really boost up a lot of volume, it's just to give it that kind of glued together feel that a limiter gives. So that is it for the processing, but we have one final test that we need to do. Now I really don't see this in any tutorial videos. What we're going to do now is we're going to volume match. So every time you throw on distortion, saturation, compression, the signal is always going to be louder than it was before you processed it. Now a lot of people never check the volumes of their processed and unprocessed signal. Now this is very important to do because you don't know if you're destroying your audio quality, destroying the mix with your compressors and saturators on. Louder is always going to sound better to you. So your ears are kind of tricked when they hear that louder signal, and they're not actually listening to how it dynamically is fitting into the track. It sounds louder, so they think it's better, which is not always the case. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off all the group processing and turn on a utility which boosts it 7 decibels, which brings it closer to the level of the process signal, so we can really tell what group processing and the return processing is doing to the signal. I recommend you guys doing this with all your effects chains and processing chains, as this is really going to tell what each plugin is going to do for your track. So we'll go with the unprocessed first. Now the processed. So this gives you guys a good idea of what the 2-step drum processing does for your drum tracks. As you guys heard, the unprocessed signal sounded kind of dull and weak, and the processed signal sounding strong, clear, and punchy.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you liked the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you want to learn more tips and tricks when it comes to electronic music production, go ahead and hit the SOUNDSHOCK logo right here. And if you guys are looking for free electronic music production resources, head on over to SOUNDSHOCKaudio.com, as there is plenty of free downloads in there for you guys. So head on over to SOUNDSHOCKaudio.com. Until next time, everyone.